Hey everybody, how you doing? Jason Ricci here, and welcome back to Free Friday. Today we're going to be discussing the concept of treating chord changes like key centers, or even as it relates to us as harmonica players, looking at each chord as potentially a different position. It's kind of the same thing once you get into it. We're going to get into it today. Most of the videos that I've been making lately are pretty basic, pretty easy, and I've kind of gotten away from some of the hard stuff. So today we're going to jump into it and check it out. Even if you're not an expert on position playing, I hope that you'll understand halfway through this video, or maybe in the next 6 months after watching this video. If you understand today, for today's purposes, if you understand what second and first and third position are, you're golden. We're going to talk about it right now. I got an A harp in my hand right now. We're going to use an A harp. We might use some other harps. Well, first, I'm putting you in the harmonica case. So when we get on the road, this is where y'all go. Right in here. All right, there we go. Okay. So yeah, I'm out here on the road. I'm in Tampa, Florida right now, and it's Thursday, and I've been waiting too late to make these Free Fridays. I'm just barely cutting it, but it's because I'm tired. We're working our butts off. All right, so we're not going to get into a ton of theory here or anything like that, but we are going to do a little bit of counting. Okay, so I got an A harmonica in my hand. So we're in the key of E, second position, right? So when the band calls E and we grab an A harp, that's second position. And our chord center, our root of one, or where is E in the key of E, is 2 draw. So now all we're going to do to find the next chord in a blues, and we're just going to use blues as an example here, but you could do this with any kind of music. What we're going to do is just count up to the 4 chord. E, F, G, A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now remember, I'm holding an A harmonica. So the band moves to the A chord for the 4 chord in the blues. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can actually treat the key, the chord of A as the key of A. So anything that I play here, I can also play up here. Right? So I can move my licks from one chord to another and say the exact same thing. Sometimes it requires a little bit of bending or overblowing or thinking, but you don't even need to do that. It's just a good place to start. What I mean by do that is move licks exactly, but finding out a couple of things right off the bat will help you to come up with some creative ideas for things that you can do when you're presented with the opportunity of a chord change. So the chord change allows for new things to happen. Now everything that you're doing on the 1 chord will work over chords 4 and 5. You don't have to change anything. You could play this all day long over all 3 chords. You can just do that all day over all 3 chords. But what I'm asking you to look at is some different ways of treating each chord, where you might be able to do something like this instead. 1. Okay, so all I did was just sort of, in my mind, kind of change positions. So I can think about it that way, as the 1 chord is second position E, And then count up to the next chord, the 4 chord. Ready? E, F, G, A. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can look at it as, okay, the band is in A and I'm on an A harmonica. That's what I do in first position, is play an A harmonica in the key of A. So any of my first position licks will work on chord 4. Right, any of that, I could just play the major scale on each chord, right, or the blues scale on each chord. We'll get to that, and play the respective scale of each chord. And then go to 4. So I'm on an A harmonica in the key of E, and I just played the major scale in second position. Now I'm going to move to the 4 chord, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and play the major scale there. Now I'll move to the 5 chord, or third position, right? So what's the 5? E, F, G, A, B. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, B. Holding in my hand an A harmonica. When do we use an A harmonica in the key of B? When we're playing in third position. So now all I have to do is figure out how to play a major scale in third. Right? That's all I got to do, and I could actually play a blues just using the scale, right? It would be a kind of very major blues, but put in one note that shouldn't have been there. But anyway, you get the idea. So that, see how it's opening up? I'm just improvising, right? But I'm just thinking, I'm moving to each position. Now, if that seems too complicated, I could do the same thing with a blues scale, and we'll do that later. But if that seems too complicated, how about just taking the same lick from each position? Let's start with that. I played it before, so we're going to go 4 draw, 3 draw, 2 draw. With a little bend there on 4. And maybe kind of bend that 3 on the way down. If you bend 4 and you move down without changing the position of your mouth, 3 draw, half step bend will already be in place. Right, so that's a second position, very common lick in second position. Okay, so now I'm going to take that same lick and move it to the 4 chord with this classic Jimmy Reed first position lick. It's the same lick in a different position or a different key center. Back to 1. Now let's learn it in third. 6 draw, 6 draw bend, 5 draw, 4 draw. Back to 4. Back to 1. Okay, so I've now learned the same lick in 3 different positions or 3 different keys. So I'm actually going to be playing in 3 different positions in my brain on one harmonica in one song. I'm also in my brain going to be thinking about 3 different key centers if I were to take this a little further. So all of a sudden, for 4 bars of one, I'm thinking E. I'm thinking of all the things that E has to offer. E major, E minor, E7, E6, E9, I'm E diminished. I'm thinking about all of that. Then when we move to A, I'm doing the same thing respectively to A to the best of my ability, and then the same thing on the B chord, 1, 4, and 5, E, F, G, A, B. So let's listen to the lick all together one more time. All right, so I hope you're getting the idea, is that I'm just moving the same idea from one position to another. Now, I had already learned these licks in 3 different positions before I realized I could use all 3 of those different positions in a starting position of second. If that confuses you, it confused me too before I figured it out, before I started paying attention to what the names of the chord were. Instead of just picking up a harmonica that's in A and playing whatever I want over E, which is perfectly acceptable, playing whatever I want over the key of E for all 3 of these chords, which is perfectly acceptable and something you should do. Before I got past that and started going, okay, well, what's the next chord? And does that change my options? And the answer is yes, it does change your options. It opens up a lot. If you want to play simple things, but be able to move those things to each chord, like a guitar player or a bass or a piano player or a saxophone or any other instrument, you're going to need to start thinking about each chord as its own key center. And what does that, like a lot of times when I'm talking to the band, I'll be like, hey, so how's this lick go? What is it? It goes root, third, fifth. And they'll be like, you mean in E or in A? Like if we're on an A chord, they're asking me to define it from that chord's key center. Okay, so they, the one of E or the one of A is the question. So let's take another example. So in my 20s, right after I discovered this, I kind of went hog wild with it, maybe a little too much. And a lot of my music, every time the band changed, I was changing as if that was the center of the world. And I was forgetting how much one note from the first chord relates to different chords in different ways. In other words, I was thinking about licks and what I can do instead of thinking about harmony and how things relate. But the only way I could understand harmony and how it related was to get into it and to go a little hog wild. All right, so let's take an example. We're going to learn the blues scale in 3 different positions here. Now, I've done this, I don't think I've ever done it for first position. So we're going to learn it in the key of E on an A harmonica, and then in the key of A on an A harmonica, and then in the key of B on an A harmonica, excuse me. So here's the scale, 2 draw. Right? So 2 draw, 3 half step bend, 4 blow, 4 bend, 4 draw, 5 draw, 6 blow. And then of course I have everything below that. So there's my pretty second position blues scale. Maybe not pretty, but dark. Now I'm going to move that same scale to first position. Now this is going to be hard for some of you guys that don't overblow, and it might even be hard for some of the guys that overblow. It might be hard for me since I haven't done it quite this way in a while. So I have to figure out how to play a blues scale in third position. I mean in first position. So I have to do that. You don't, because I'm about to hand it to you. But doing the work yourself for different scales is going to be remarkable in terms of your development. The struggling to think about what the next right note is more important than even getting the next right note. It's the experience of learning and that frustration and that thought process. That's where all the magic happens in learning an instrument. So blues scale in first position. So 4 blow, 4 overblow, 5 draw, 5 overblow, 6 blow, 6 overblow, 7 blow. See how cool that is? So when the band moves to the 4 chord, I can just start using that 4 chord blues scale or just certain notes from it. I'm going to simplify it in a minute and give you a classic song, Help Me, by Sonny Boy Williamson, based on the Green Onion Sting, and that's what we're going to do. Now, before we do that though, let's look at the easier chord, third position. So before we get into this chord, if that business with all the overblows scared you on the 4 chord, well then you can just do this one here and you can skip the 4 chord and continue to play in second position in your mind over both 1 and 4 chords, and then just do this one. This one's easy. 4 draw, 5 draw, 6 blow, 6 draw, half step bend, 6 draw, 7 blow, 8 draw. Oh, my 8 draw is stuck. There we go. All right, so let's listen to all 3 of them together before we do the Help Me simplification. So this realization is one of the first things that started helping me to sound like my own harmonica player, and not like little Walter or anybody, because I wasn't hearing really a lot of cats besides Howard Levy doing this kind of stuff, and I started doing it in blues, and Adam Gusso was doing some really, really cool stuff too, but it wasn't quite as academic as the way I'm doing it here. And most of the time when I was doing it back in my 20s, I was really just going up and down the scale. I wasn't really doing a lot of fancy licks, just a... And you don't have to stay perfectly in it. You can just use a few of the notes. Especially if you're in a major key. But the best way to do it is to just start learning your scales. And then move it to first. And then move it to third. Now this is easy to do on a guitar or bass. You just got to move your hand and you play the same form. On a harmonica, it's a whole other nasty mind, you know the word I'm about to pick, you know, it's rough because every single chord, you have to change every single thing that you do. One chord starts on a two draw, the next one starts on a 4 blow, and then you got to overblow to get the next note, whereas on the first chord you bend it, and then on the third chord you just go from a draw to a draw. It gets very, very hard. So one of the first things that I started doing, even before I got into the scale, is like I showed you before, just moving certain licks. If I knew some first position licks and some third position licks, just started remembering any first position lick will work on the 4 chord. Any third position lick will work on the 5 chord. Just remembering that these licks that I had learned off of like telephone blues and Junior Wells or cotton licks on the first position cotton licks, Jimmy Reed first position licks, that those licks would now work on the 4 chord before I got too crazy. The next thing I started doing is trying to pick out certain melodies that I couldn't do in cross harp before realizing this. So like Help Me is a prime example. Now a lot of times if you want to play this number, you know, and you want to play what the bass player is playing, you have to switch to another position. Or you could switch to another position in your brain. So on the 1 chord, so it's 2 draw, 3 half step bend, 4 blow. Root, minor third, 4, 4. All right, or root, flat third, 4. Okay, so now when we get to the 4 chord, I want to play that, but I don't know how. Well, I got to find root, flat third, and then 4. So it's 4 blow, 4 overblow, 5 draw. So I'm not just learning Help Me here, I'm learning where my minor third is, or flatted third is, on the 4 chord in 2nd position. I'm also simultaneously learning where the minor third is in A, on an A harmonica, or 1st position, however you want to look at it. Now there's an easier way to do this by switching positions, but a lot of times you don't want to switch positions. If we're in the key of E, that would put me on a D harmonica. And then the 4 chord would just be in 2nd position. But then comes the 5 chord. All right, so on 5, 4 draw, 5 draw, 6 blow. All right, so let's play Help Me the way a bass player would. Right, and now you can start to improvise. Now you might think that overblow still sounds a little funny. It does. So sometimes you got to push them up a little to get it into tune there. You notice I do this little technique. Everybody likes it. What they don't know is that it's really just me disguising my problems with intonation. So when I'm bending these overblows all over the place, I'm really just It sounds cool, but I'm really just covering up the fact that I really can't hit the note in tune right away. Sometimes I go up past where it's supposed to be, which is a beautiful effect. Who made this harp? I made this one. So you can kind of do that. You can do that with bends too. All right. I'm getting away from the subject. So, look, the other thing you can do is, like I said, move to third position. Now look, all of a sudden the same rules of everything we applied works in this position too. Okay, so let's take a look at that. All right, so if I'm in third and I'm playing Help Me, we already learned what the lick was in second on the 5 chord. Now we're on the 1 chord. 4 draw, 5 draw, 6 12. In the key of E. All right, now we're moving. I'm on a D harmonica, E, again, moving to the 4 chord, E, F, G, A. Right? So when I'm holding a D harp and the band's moving to A, when do I use a D harp in the key of A? Every time I'm playing second position or cross harp. So in third position, any 4 chord cross harp licks will work. Any cross harp licks will work on the 4 chord. 1, 4. Okay, so now we're going to the 5 chord. All right, and so now I'm actually can look at the 5 chord. 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? As being in 4th position. So, same thing. Now I'm going to play in 3rd position, but I'm going to look at 3rd position. The 1 chord is 3rd position. The 4 chord is 2nd. And then the 5 chord as 4th. Now. Same thing. All this phenomena happens all over the place. If you just learn like 3 or 4, maybe 5 different positions, you're going to find that in each one of those positions, there's the opportunity to play the other 4 positions, if you want to look at it that way. The other way around this, and this is the way that I've been thinking about it more lately than the way I'm telling you, is this is how I started. The way I'm telling you is how I started. I've just been learning the notes in each chord. And so now I'm not even really thinking in terms of like key centers or the band is like, or especially not thinking in terms of positions as much. I'm just thinking, where's the root of 4? Where's the 3rd of 4? Where's the 5th of 4? Where's the 6th of 4? And how can I navigate these things? So, and not just that, but that's where it starts. It starts with just root, third, and fifth in chord study, in basic harmony. Then I start adding in sevens and everything else. I already learned how to do the scales, like I showed you. Which one is this? Oh, I'm on the C harp. We'll go back to the A. So I'd already learned all of that. The next thing to do is just start focusing on a couple of those notes. Now you don't have to jump into this stuff in high gear. Like you could just pick one note from each chord and kind of go about it that way. If you check out the video, I'll link it below. If you check out the video called Get Your Own Sound, okay, all it is about picking notes from a major triad or from a basic chord, root, third, fifth. Just picking one of those notes and playing, and then kind of basing licks off of it. It's actually the same thing I'm teaching you right now without all of the academic rigmarole that I'm presenting you with. I'm just trying to let you know how I figured it out in my brain of, oh my God, the band is moving to A and I'm on an A harp. Will Jimmy Reed licks work? Because Jimmy was on an A harp and he was playing an A, but the song was in A. Will they still work just because the chord is A? Yes. Yes, they will. Will third position licks still work in the key of B on an A harp just because we're not in the key of B, but we're only playing a B chord while we're in E? Yes, you are temporarily in B. You are temporarily in A. Whenever the band moves, you are temporarily in that key. Now, you don't have to look at it that way. As a matter of fact, it can be harmful to over-compartmentalize each one of these chords things, and you end up sounding all herky-jerky. Right, but what you can do is start blending them together. It's much more artful that way. So all I did was just grab that minor third off the 4 chord, that overblow, and if you couldn't overblow, you just hit the root. 1, 4. Even when we were studying root notes, we were treating chords as key changes, right? Or treating chords as chordal centers, as a center point. That's all it is. That's all it is. Now, I hope I didn't confuse you worse. The fact is that once you get into this stuff and you start studying it, I promise you, you might sound a little worse before you sound better. And you'll be confused thinking about all of it. But it really does open up doors. If you got nothing else out of this, what you got, you can move that Jimmy Reed lick right into 3 different positions, and you're off to the races. And you just start moving that lick around and just taking different stuff. Have fun. You know, everybody likes this stuff. You know, grandmothers like it, dogs like it, cats like it, hedgehogs like it. But it's hard. It's hard. And it takes a while before it gets natural. And then even then, if you stop doing it for a little while, you're going to have to come back and practice it. I know I was a little rusty on the first position licks and also on the 4th position licks and 3rd position. So I've got to go back and step up my game mentally, thinking about where each note in the chord is. All right. Love y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.